Silence. Order. I have returned to the demo scene. To all those people who were so mean, I will destroy everything they got. Make me your leader, vote for evil bot.
Microphone. Hello everybody. I'm going to talk today about what I've been doing for the last couple of years. A couple of years ago, Desktop was CNCD and myself, we transitioned from, I was working in video games, I worked in video games for 12 years, and Yanni was a freelance artist, animator. And we got into the world of live visuals, live shows. So these days, for a living, we make visuals for large major rock tours, TV, live events, various other things. I was going to talk to you about, firstly, what we do, how that went, what it's like working in the industry, and also to show our tool. So, story so far. So 2 years ago, I met a company called D3 Technologies, which is a media server company, and started working with them to create a product to enable people to make generative content for live shows. At the moment, or previously, pretty much everything done on a show is done with video, just regular video clips, with occasionally a few effects on top, like some very, very simple kind of blur or color grading done in the media server. And then occasionally there is some custom coded, something someone's made in open frameworks or something like that. Which means that custom real-time stuff is very hard to use in a show because it's custom, because it has to be written from scratch. And it causes problems, it's problematic. So what we wanted to do is to create a product that enabled artists to use a proper tool, an artist-friendly tool, to make visuals in the way that they use After Effects, but to make real-time output. And in August, we actually started a company and we've begun selling our product, and we also make visuals for various tours. The first show we did was Eurovision 2014. We did some generative effects on that, on the live show. We did the visuals for Ed Sheeran's world tour, U2's current world tour, Kasabian's current tour, Ellie Goulding, Black Sabbath. Amazingly, Black Sabbath is still touring and we were able to do their visuals, which is cool. We also did the Lady Gaga performance on the Grammys this year, and we just did the Coldplay tour. That's going out today, in fact, in Buenos Aires, its first date. So we've been lucky enough to work with some very high-profile, good quality acts. To give a kind of impression of the scale of this kind of show, these are some photos I took of when we were rehearsing at Wembley Stadium for Ed Sheeran. So this is, if you know or not, Wembley Stadium, this is an 80,000-seater stadium. It's pretty big. And that's what it's like when we started loading in. Those two blue trucks you can see are like proper massive trucks to give you the impression, to give you an idea of the size and scale of the screens. That's what it's like when we first got the screens working. When we were rehearsing during the day, like setting up some visuals. as the room slowly filled with people. And then that's what it ended up looking like. So obviously I didn't take that shot because I was not on stage at the time, but it was quite cool to look out and see 80,000 people holding their phones up and so on. So I'm going to go through sort of perhaps some misconceptions that you might have about what it's like in the industry, and sort of give you an impression of what it's actually like. So the first myth a lot of people will probably have in their minds is that you can use the best PC in existence to run your stuff. You can basically go to a shop and buy a PC with 4 GPUs and do whatever you want. You can make something ridiculously powerful. And that is not the case. If anything, the hardware we are able to use is quite limited. So media servers are the computers used to run shows at the moment. They are more or less just PCs, but they come in very big boxes and they cost about £30,000 upwards. And they are, for a PC that probably costs about 10,000 to make. And the reason they're so expensive is because they're well supported. The companies who sell media servers will go, if their media server breaks, they'll replace it anywhere in the world very, very quickly. If anyone has any problems, they can call them up and they will fix the problem in the middle of the night, regardless. Because the nature of this business is that if there are problems, then there are major problems because your show doesn't work anymore. If your show doesn't work, everyone gets in trouble. So while it is technically possible on some jobs to build a custom PC to your specs, the reality is that you don't want to be the guy who someone's going to call up in the middle of the night saying, my tour's not working, or we just shipped this thing in a flight case. Because this stuff all tours, it all has to tour, it all has to be put up in a day, taken down again straight after the show and put back on a bus or a plane, and it will probably get dropped multiple times as it goes through customs and whatever else. So you don't want to be the guy who gets called up when the PC has been dropped and broke and you have to replace it in the middle of the night while you're on holiday and so on. The approach we took was to integrate with a number of media servers. So rather than shipping our own PCs to run our stuff, or even writing our own servers, our own media server code, we integrate with other servers. So we run inside their system as a plugin. And this absolves us of a large number of support responsibilities that would otherwise be very, very painful. But what it does mean is that we have to run on the media server, and the media server, generally, they have to use hardware which is suitable for output. So it's not the best GPUs in the world. They tend to be things that can do gen-lock, i.e. like multiple displays can be synchronized together. They tend to be those sort of the workstation class cards. And we also have to share the system with other things going on, other servers. So it's a very sort of strong decision to say you're not going to use custom hardware. You're going to use whatever is given to you. But it means that it's actually practical. People don't want to buy new PCs or new hardware for every job. The other thing about this industry is that every piece of hardware on a show, be it the projectors, the lights, the screens, the media servers, it's all rented. Everything is rented from rental houses. And rental houses carry stocks of servers, but they do not carry stocks of custom PCs that you can make up to your heart's content. You have to fit in with the industry, and that means using what they've already got. So that's why we work on in media servers, and why actually what it means is you always have to hit your 50 or your 60 frames per second performance. Dropping frames is generally considered bad form. even probably more so than in demos, much more so than in demos. Even in games, it's probably less of an issue. Like the output has to be a reliable frame rate, which means that you end up having to give yourself headroom. So what you probably end up doing is having about half the kind of power that you'd have when you're making a demo, or a quarter even, if you're prepared to run your demo at a low frame rate. So the effects you can do are not that everything has to be squeezed down. You don't have the complete freedom that you'd like, even though you're doing a job on some project with £1 million budget, you still can't use whatever hardware you like. You've got there's probably a misconception that if you're doing this for a tour, you've got all the time and money in the world and you can spend months on it and so on. The nature of this is that politically, things tend to happen very late. So most of the jobs we've done, we've only had at most a month to make all the content. And when you're making content for sort of 20 songs on the tour, like the reality of this business is that you don't have time to do really complicated, heavy stuff most of the time. So even the guys making the video for shows, they tend to have to cut a lot of corners. If they need to make the content for a song in 2 days, every track, they don't have the ability to, they don't have the time to start getting V-Ray out and doing really nice high quality renders of everything. The rendering budget is cheap. They often have to crank stuff out very quickly. And it's the same for the real-time stuff as well. You have to be very time optimal, and you don't have all the money in the world either. And you also have to be prepared that whatever you make, there's a very good chance that the artist will come in and say they don't like it and throw it all away. So even if you did spend a month making a really beautiful, like V-Ray rendered 3D piece, then the artist could come in and just say, I don't like it, it's gone, unfortunately. The way this sort of works in this business, people will probably think that the record label is in charge or whatever, they're paying the bills. It's not. The artist is the one who is in control of everything. They pay the bills directly, it comes out of their money. And they will often show up and have the say on everything. Normally very late on. They normally don't see anything till very late in the day. They delegate everything else to, like, the actual design and everything to other people, but then they will come in at the last minute and just say, we don't like it, it's gone. We did a music video for Coldplay in 2014. We shot the whole thing with projectors. There was projected content, it was all shot. There was a big film shoot. It looked really good. And Chris Martin decided he didn't like it, and they chucked it away. They paid for the whole thing, but he just said, I don't like it, and they chucked it away. That's the nature of the business. Unfortunately, the artist is in direct control. And sometimes some of the artists you can work with are, as you can imagine, extremely temperamental and challenging, without wanting to mention any directly by name. But you can imagine from the list that I read out earlier which one. There's a misconception that you've got all the time and resources to rehearse and make everything perfect. So you can sit there, if you're doing like a live camera effect, for example, then you can sit there and get everybody to frame that shot perfectly, for the artist to stand in exactly the right place, that you can do all this perfectly and get it right. The reality is that rehearsals are extremely expensive. Most of the acts we've worked with, the rehearsals for the tour, the production rehearsals are from like 3 days to a week. And in that time, they have to build the stage in some rehearsal arena somewhere. Normally they actually rent a stadium or an arena, unless they rent a proper, like a film studio or something. They have to build everything. They have to program all of the lighting. They also have to program all the videos, set everything up. and get the band in and get them to look at it and all these kind of things, you typically only have a few days. So it's very, very hard to make things refined. And often a lot of creative decisions are made in the rehearsals because it's the first time you actually see it, how it's going to look. It's very, very different. The process of making like a film or an animation sitting at home looking at it on your monitor compared to making live visuals is completely different, because live visuals are not just about the thing that you put on the screen, they're about the arrangement of the screens. Like often they use LED cut into different shapes and set up in an interesting arrangement. It's about the lights that go with it, the staging, the haze, everything all together. And you only see that when you get into rehearsals, which means that you end up having to do a lot of work on the fly while you're sat there creatively. Another misconception is that visual quality is really important. This definitely works in our favor, actually, quite heavily, that it doesn't have to be perfect. When you look at something on a monitor or on a film, when you look at something in a film, you obviously see it in fine detail up close. When you see a live visual, when it's hidden behind the band and layers of haze and lights, and it's been projected with a slightly less than perfect projector, or it's rendered on an LED screen, which is only sort of 500 pixels across, so pixels are literally bigger than your head, then the quality that you need to render is more forgiving than otherwise. The single most important thing in the stuff we do is stability. If it crashed, or if you crashed more than a couple of times, you're fucked and you probably will never work again. So stability is extremely important, and so is performance. Reliability. Tourability is also extremely important. The guys who take a show on the road are not the guys who program the show. We don't go on tour. I've been on a tour bus for a couple of days. It was long enough. I don't recommend it. They have surprisingly nice, like marble bathrooms in the tour bus, which is good. But the pleasure of waking up in a bunk surrounded by like 16 other guys in a car park somewhere outside an arena in Glasgow is not a lifestyle choice for me. So the reality is that the guys who tour it are a touring crew, and they're not the guys who program it. They probably don't know how your software works. You need to make a system that they can load up every day and press go, and that's all they have to do. And ideally, that also means that any kind of controls that are done live need to be done not with a keyboard or a mouse with a guy sat in front of a computer. They need to be driven from something like a lighting desk. So you often integrate the control of your system from the lighting desk, so they can press buttons and jump cues around, and it moves in your system as well. You essentially want to make your system in a box that they can show up with on site and press go every time. And that means that if you're going to make something really massively complicated that requires a lot of operation, then it's out. It's not going to happen. I suppose the interesting with visual quality, we've never really been asked to do like some extremely nice, high quality glass rendered anything. We've never been asked to do a ray-marched tunnel. We've never been like. Most of what people want to do is still 2D. A lot of it is particles or quite simple effects. There's a lot of video processing involved in what we do, but there is 3D actually rarely comes into it. It comes into it in a few projects, but often it's quite simple stuff that people want. Like often it's just post effects, particles, that kind of thing. Which is it makes you feel a bit sad when you put all this effort into making a really nice, physically lit lighting 3D engine. But on the other hand, it is. I think it's interesting that the other part of this is it's a lot about range and flexibility rather than visual quality as well. Because as I said, the problem is that you get the band, or when you're in rehearsals, people will like demand very, very rapid changes. And you might have to come up with something while you're sat there in half an hour as a look for a song. So having a lot of flexibility and a lot of range of material that you can use is far more important than having a few things that look really, really good. If no one wants if you do Ray March tunnels really well, but the guy decides they want it to look more hand-drawn, then what are you going to do? If that's all you've got, then you're going to be limited. Another misconception is the idea that it has to be totally perfect and everything has to be amazing and perfect every time. Most shows we've done at some point, like even at Wembley with Ed Sheeran, at some point an LED screen just stopped working, like a panel of LED just stopped working. When we were doing Eurovision, we were doing this stuff on an interactive LED floor, and this thing broke all the fucking time. And when a tile stops working, it doesn't go black, it goes bright red. In the middle of this is on live TV, you know what I mean? This is like with all of a sudden your beautiful water scene has gone with a bright red spot in the middle of it. Like a lot of the hardware, a lot of that display hardware itself, the LED is unreliable and shady and cheap. So things go wrong all the time. The good thing about rock and roll touring is that stuff goes wrong in all areas all the time. Like something goes wrong with the sound, something goes wrong with the visuals. No one really notices, and it's accepted that things are going to go wrong and there are going to be mistakes. So there's a bit of leeway there, which is really good. TV is different. There's not very much leeway for mistakes on TV. If stuff goes wrong on TV, people get really pissed off. The audiences are much bigger. It's obviously recorded for posterity, so everyone can go through your mistakes over and over again. Then the good thing with TV is that there's a guy cutting the cameras, so if something really horrible goes wrong, he can just go like that and look somewhere else, which is the advantage. But still, while it doesn't have to be completely perfect, it does have to still be reliable. If your software starts crashing, people are going to get very nervous, and you'll probably end up getting kicked off the job. A final misconception. There is a misconception that I, like many other people who start working in the industry, have when I started, which was that I was in some way important and that my work was important. This is a gross misconception. You in video world are not important in any means. You are right down the list. If you think about people coming to watch the show and the show in general, the most important thing is the artist themselves. The second most important thing is that they sound good. If mistakes happen in the audio side, people get really pissed off and start asking for their money back. If mistakes happen in video, or the video looks good or the video looks shit, generally you probably won't get noticed. If video gets mentioned in a review, it's either because it's horrible or because you've done a really, really good job. So it's very rarely mentioned. Probably one of the only we've got mentioned in reviews a couple of times. The one time we really made the front page was this one time at the Kasabian tour, the first date of the Kasabian tour. I am going to tell this anecdote. So the Kasabian tour we did, it happened really, really late. We were really, really rushed. There was loads of issues. We only had 3 days of rehearsals. It was a really technically complicated show because we were using Kinect cameras for live analysis, processing of the band, basically. So it was a really technically demanding show. And we had no time to rehearse it. And for one reason or other, we weren't finished when we did rehearsals. This is proper like demo compo deadline pushing material, right? So we had to go to the first date in Glasgow. And we showed up in Glasgow. We were working there all day. And due to circumstances and certain people beyond our control, we were still working when the room was full of, like, filling up with people. And we were still working when the support act was on. And we were still working when, like 5 minutes before the band was going to come on stage, we were still working, right? But unfortunately, this meant that no one actually bothered to set up the backup machine. It's standard practice in live shows that you have a master machine or multiple master machines and one backup machine that are normally on a network. So if one machine fails, then the backup can hop in on whatever one failed, right? But no one had bothered to set up the backup because we're all still working. And there was this one track where we'd put a placeholder image in instead of the actual image. And we changed the image at the last minute. And then, so we did remember to change it, but we ran the show, and on the second track, it crashed. And that was a bit of a bummer. Because we'd been working on the machine all day, no one would reset it, so it crashed. But it kind of held the image. We kind of got away with it because it was really, really slow. It was a really slow piece anyway, so people gave it a few weird looks, but we kind of got away with it. But we didn't have a backup to switch to, so we had to reset the machine live while I was watching. We just had to go dark for a minute while we reset. And when we turned back on, unfortunately, the last edits we'd done were not saved. So the next track came on, and it's the one with this placeholder image that we'd left in. And the placeholder image came up. And then we got this massive cheer from this Glaswegian crowd. And we're like, oh, what's happened? And we realized that emblazoned across the screen was a picture with "London's full of cunts" written on it. And and obviously, in Scotland, this went down really well. It was like everyone was like it was big on, it was trending on Twitter. Everyone was like, this is the funniest thing. We got in the front page of the Sun. We did pretty well for this. But unfortunately, there was also a backlash because, and obviously the band were going to be playing in London in like 2 weeks. So there was this big sort of backlash, and loads of people sort of saying they were going to cancel their tickets and things like that to the London gig. So the band had to apologise. So yeah, the one time we made the reviews. So maybe in that case, video is important sometimes. But generally, the fact is generally, like, there are a load of other more important things than you. Like visually, like the video is just one small element, and you have to remember that people are coming there not to watch the visuals, they're there to watch the band. Most people, when they go to a gig, there's a beautiful set of screens showing all our great content in the middle. There's 2 IMAG screens left and right, and most people watch the gig like this. And in fact, most people watch the gig like this with their phone, filming the IMAG screen and looking at it and not watching anything we've done. And some people actually use iPads like this, so no one can see what they're doing behind them. So this is actually something we've worked on quite heavily, because one of the successes that we've had, we've done a lot of work with processing live video. So you've got cameras focused on the band, right? And they normally put them up on the side screens. But because we had a good set of effects that we could apply to live video, it meant that it was more appealing to actually make the live video part of the effect, part of the visuals for the song. It means you can ditch the left and right IMAG screens, which means people actually watch your stuff because they have to in order to watch the band, otherwise they can't see anything. So it actually means that we're more important than we used to be, which is great. While most on live touring stuff, you're not that important. On TV gigs, you're even less important, because in there it's all about, like, the people only see what the cameraman is shooting, and generally the cameraman's shooting close-ups of the artist, which means that all the stuff you've done only gets seen by the people who are actually in the room. Very disappointing. So let me give a quick, I've got some shots from the Kasabian gig. is showing some Connect stuff. And what this kind of does illustrate is that you can see the video, obviously, but you can also see there's shitloads of lights, haze, all this other stuff going on, and the video is only a small element. And it's quite a humbling learning experience that at some point in your career you just have to realize that, you just have to realize that you're just a light. You're like a big light. That's all you're doing, and you're not that important. You're not making your own personal film that you can show behind the band and everyone will see. You're just filling in some lights, basically. Here's some more shots. It actually looked quite nice, this gig. We got a nomination for an award for this, actually. And again, big fucking lights is mostly what you see. And every time that big strobe light there went off, the Connect cameras got flooded with IR and stopped working. So this big strobe was not our friend. So I'm going to talk a bit more about our software now. A lot of people wanted to do real-time content in this industry. Real-time is very appealing for a couple of reasons, perhaps not completely obvious reasons. The first reason is obvious, actually. It's with real-time stuff, you can make it interactive. So, and we're not talking like interactive in the Twitter wall kind of interactivity sense or anything like that. What we're talking about is like, you can make visuals based on live camera effects. You can do some audio reactive stuff, although it's not very appealing, actually. People don't really seem to care about audio reactive very much. Perhaps possibly because a lot of bands play to click tracks. They play to playback. So you can often just grab the stems and bake in whatever reactive stuff does and play it back to timecode. You don't need to do it live. You don't need to do anything with live audio analysis, really. Occasionally you do. But the interactivity element of live camera effects and something else that has been really good for us is the growth of tracking systems. So it's become quite commonplace in the last couple of years for people to use systems like Blacktracks, which are essentially, it's like a load of IR cameras circling the stage, and then you use little active IR active IR beacons on the body, and the cameras can pick these up. And by multiple cameras picking them up, you can triangulate and use them for tracking. And this has become really popular the last few years. It's quite expensive, but we've used this on. We've done the Cirque du Soleil show end of last year. Turok, which is their big new, is basically Avatar. Is actually Avatar. So there's loads of weird-looking blue people walking around. And they're all tracked with Blacktracks, which enables us to put, because the entire stadium is projected on, they've got like 24 projectors or something ridiculous, projecting over the entire arena. So every point in the arena has video on it. It means that as people walk around, we can put effects under them and stuff like that. So this has been really good. This has been a really good growth area. We also did, we used Blacktracks. Are there any Dutch people in here? No. Does anyone know who Marco Bassato is? If there were Dutch people in here, they'd be going crazy right now for this guy. He's like this artist who people have only ever heard of in Holland, but sort of like 10% of the population go and see his tour. It's ridiculous. So yeah, tracking is really good. Live video is really good. We've used Connect cameras and 3D cameras on a couple of jobs as well. Well, obviously, doing interactivity without real time is a struggle. So having a generative content tool like ours has become a really useful thing for those people. But the other reason real time is great is slightly less obvious. It comes back to efficiency of production. Video is actually really annoying. On Eurovision, in the end, they had 1 terabyte of video. And when people want to make changes to that video, which happens all the time because the director always demands little changes up to the last minute, it means that they have to go off and re-render it and then deliver the video, like some hundreds of gigs of video in some stupid uncompressed format that can be played back by a media server. they have to deliver it on a drive or copy it over the network, and then this has to then be distributed to all the other machines on the network. So you end up with this thing that takes like 2 hours just to update, which is not particularly appealing when you're doing this all the time and you've got loads and loads of changes to make. So one of the appealing things about real time is it enables people to make changes and edit stuff on the fly much more quickly. As everyone who makes demos knows, real-time stuff is a great workflow. It's way better in many ways. As long as you've got good tools, it's way better than making video because the speed at which you can iterate and change and respond to requests is far faster. So this has been, this is our initial entry into the industry was mainly based on the first thing, the interactivity, live camera, processing, tracking, this kind of thing. And most of the jobs we've done in some way involve that. But increasingly, our aim is to push the second one, the fact that real-time works as a workflow. And we're trying to persuade the industry that all their stuff should be made in real time using our tools rather than made in After Effects or in their traditional tools, because if they make it real time, then they can make those small changes at any point in the pipeline really quickly, which is great for everybody, really. Finally, I'm going to show a quick demo of our tool, which could go horribly. We'll do our best. All right. Okay. Cool. This is our tool. So it's a node-based interface. It's all in Windows. It is a node-based interface with a timeline and animation, curve editing, and property editing, and so on. It looks suspiciously similar to a demo tool, probably because it basically is. We've been working on this thing for a while, but we have commercialized it since August. And it's kind of interesting in itself. Like we're still in closed beta officially, but the hard thing about this is actually like making a tool and releasing it is one thing. Getting people to actually use it is much more challenging, particularly in this industry where everything's kind of done on word of mouth. Everything's done on reputation. It's not like it's not a massive industry. So if you want to get yourself on a job, it tends to be that you have to actually go to individuals and persuade them that they should use your tool. This is not like the animation industry where there's enough people around doing this kind of work that you can put a tool out and if it's good, it will get used. This is the case that you actually have to win sales one by one on a personal level. So that's what we've ended up having to do a lot of, is doing a lot of hand sales, spend a lot of time working on our licensing arrangements and this kind of thing. The commercials are as important as the software. But we're actually getting somewhere now, so people are actually buying it and we have users and stuff, so it's great, which means that we can develop it. So I'm going to, how about I make an effect and show you how it works. All right. So first thing, I'm going to load in a video. So I'm going to load in this video of Ellie Goulding from her most recent tour. And I'm going to render Ellie Goulding on an image plane. Make the image the right size. Zoom in. So this is Ellie Goulding, who you might be familiar with or might not, depending on your interest in pop. And this is just some footage from her iMag, like it's just dumped off the tour. Basically, we got someone to give us some footage when we were working on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make Ellie Goulding into particles. So by using this node-based system, I can create a particle system that emits from an image. And I know I need to render them as well. So you've probably seen a lot of demo tools before, and this is superficially similar, but the tricky thing about it was that it's easy to make a complicated tool. It's easy to make a tool that can do complicated things. What our tool used to be able to do really complicated things if you wanted to spend the time. You could do amazing complicated, you can make demos that are very complicated with it. What's challenging is making something simple and easy and making it easy to make something easy. Like, it should be easy to make a basic effect. And that's what we've spent a lot of time recently trying to do, to make it intuitive and easy to make something like that. So now I have particles being emitted from Ellie Goulding, which is not very interesting because they're all just kind of random. So now we're going to do a little bit of tracking. Just use this way. So by using some motion vector analysis through optical flow, now the particles stick to Ellie. And if I now fade out the image, so we have particles tracking Ellie Goulding. Now, I'm just going to cull some of the sort of darker ones in the image. So now we just have the bright parts of Ellie Goulding. And you can see, this is the tracking is working fine. This is actually quite a good basis for a load of kind of particle effects done off live video. And the next thing we're going to do is turn Ellie into smoke. So I suppose the takeaway from this is that what we've tried to do is make using this node interface, and the nodes themselves are quite big, I suppose, in terms of what they can do. Unlike some tools which have a node for changing the alpha blend mode or adding stuff or whatever, we don't really do that. We have nodes that are quite, the granularity of what they do is quite big. So you need relatively few nodes to make a reasonably complicated thing. That's the idea anyway. But they should also be reasonably intuitive, in theory. We've worked very hard on trying to make it intuitive, but there's obviously a way to go. So this is now rendering the particles into I'm just going to make that a bit bigger. This is now rendering the particles into kind of feedback effect as well as in the onto screen directly. Let's put a little fluid effector on there. So as she moves around, so it's kind of creating a smoke kind of feedback as she moves around. And if we sort of imagined if we spent some proper time and sort of spent more time foofing this effect a bit more, we could probably make something that looks quite nice. But this gives you this kind of look of smoke emitted from a live camera. And that gives you a very, very simple example of what you can do with this. We want people to use our tool, not just in the industry, but we want regular artists to use our tool. We do have a beta program, and there is a free trial that you can get hold of. And part of why I'm here today talking about this is to try and encourage any artists in the room who are interested to try and give this thing a go and try and see how it applies to your kind of normal work. The goal for this thing eventually is not just to be used for live shows. We want to bring the real-time workflow for graphics in general to the world of animation and other things. We want to try and show that if we believe that we can get the kind of quality now of rendering that makes it good enough for a lot of use cases. One of the appealing things about the live shows industry is that, as I said, you don't need film quality rendering. No one ever uses GI in live shows because it's pointless. By the time you've rendered something projected on a slightly less than perfect surface and with a projector with a slightly shady bulb and it's running through all this kind of processing, the quality the quality it's worth doing in your visuals doesn't need to be the perfectness of film. It can be reduced slightly, which offers an opportunity for real-time rendering. Real-time rendering cannot achieve very easily the quality of film, but it can achieve what is good enough. You can make stuff that's good enough for certain applications. And the live events industry is obviously one of them, but we think like this has also applications in like some uses of animation and film where the quality, there isn't time, or the quality doesn't need to be as perfect. So we're encouraging any artist to try this tool out, see what you can do with it. And we're going to probably come up with some sort of way of enabling this to be used for making demos as well. So you would be able to use this tool to make demos with if you want at some point soon. And that is the end of my talk. Any questions? No? No questions? Cool. Oh, you always.
Was it Bono?
Bono?
Tricky person.
No. Bono's lovely. What are you talking about? No. He's an interesting character, though.
Can you download this still?
What's that?
Can you download this still somewhere?
There is a trial version you can download. Yeah, it's all. We are selling it. It does cost money, but we have several tiers. They're basically the top end of this tool. The top end version is the expensive version, which can actually be used to export a real-time thing to a media server and play back. We've got a light version that's like a few £100 that can be used to make stuff, but not to. You can't export it to a show. Like it has to be. It will be watermarked. So the trial is free to download as well. So yeah, have a look.
Where?
www.notch.one. If anyone's interested in giving it a go, drop me an email, and because we are in a closed beta program at the moment, and I'll be able to add you to the beta. But don't just do it to be nosy and try and work out what we're going to put in the next demo. Maybe trying that. If you actually do, if someone is seriously interested in giving it a look, then please drop me an email and add you to the beta. Cool. All right, we're done. Thank you.